How does an entire company collapse because one woman took her laptop home to work? The conference call detonated at 8:12 in the morning. No greetings, no small talk, just the sound of chairs scraping back and a voice I had only heard twice before, sharp enough to cut through the silence. Why are the core systems offline? No one answered. I wasn't in that room, but I would later hear how the executives stared at one another, how someone muted and unmuted their microphone like it might buy time. The payment pipeline is frozen, a man finally said. Customer access is failing. Internal tools aren't responding. And who, the voice said, slower now, more dangerous. Authorized the termination on Friday. A pause, then a name. Marla did. Another pause, longer. For what reason she claimed the employee stole company property. What property? A laptop. The room went dead quiet. You shut down the architect of your infrastructure, the voice said, rising. Over a laptop she took home to work, someone tried to speak. Someone else cleared their throat. It didn't help. That was the moment my name entered the room. Freya Hale? Someone said, Senior Systems Architect. The voice at the head of the table went cold. You fired who? The story you're about to hear is a work of fiction created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While the events, characters, and companies are imagined, the emotions behind them reflect real workplace conflicts, power imbalances, and the consequences of unchecked authority. Each story carries its own message, shaped by a different moral fault line, and is told to explore accountability, dignity, and the cost of careless decisions. 2 days earlier, I was still employed. Freya, can you stay late tonight? Marla had asked, leaning against my doorway like she owned my time. The Seattle rollout needs final validation. I'll take the laptop home, I said. It'll be faster. She waved a hand. Do what you need to do. I did. I always did. On Friday morning, she didn't wave. She didn't sit. She pointed at the chair across from her desk and said, I caught you red-handed. I don't understand, I said. You removed company property without authorization, she said, voice already raised. No arguing. Security, get her out. Marla, I said, standing, this is my work machine. She didn't look at me when she replied, not anymore. By the time the elevators closed behind me, my access was gone. My badge was dead. My inbox stopped refreshing, and somewhere downtown, a room full of powerful people was just beginning to understand what that decision had set in motion. I woke before my alarm, the way I always did on deadline days. My phone was already warm with messages by the time I reached the kitchen. Morning, Freya. Daniel from Product had written, We're waiting on your confirmation before we lock the rollout. I'll have it before noon, I replied. I ran the final checks last night. I poured coffee, opened my email on my personal tablet, and skimmed through overnight alerts. Nothing alarming. The systems were stable, clean, exactly how I'd designed them to be. At 9, Marla passed my desk and tapped the edge of my monitor. You're early, she said. I usually am. She smiled like that was something she could take credit for. We need the validation report tightened. Legal wants it clean. I'll take the laptop home tonight, I said. I can run the tests faster without interruptions. She didn't hesitate. Fine, just make sure it's done. That was how things always worked. I stayed late. I fixed what broke. I took responsibility when others hesitated. I was the senior systems architect, which meant every failure eventually landed in my lap, whether I caused it or not. Around noon, I joined a quick call with the infrastructure team. Anything we should worry about? One of them asked. No, I said. If something goes wrong, it'll lock itself down before it hurts anyone. That's why we trust you, he said. Trust? The word stayed with me longer than the call. That evening, I slid the laptop into my bag and shut down my desk. As I walked past Marla's office, she was still there, scrolling on her phone. Don't work too late, she said, without looking up. I smiled. I'll try. At home, I set the laptop on my kitchen table and logged in. The code opened like a familiar language, one I'd been speaking for years. I worked through dinner, then passed it, hands moving on muscle memory more than thought. Just before midnight, I sent the final confirmation. All clear, I wrote, We're ready. The reply came a few minutes later. Good work, Daniel said. Couldn't have done this without you. I closed the laptop and rested my palm on it for a moment before standing up. It felt like any other night. Productive, quiet, earned. I had no idea that by morning, that same laptop would be treated like evidence instead of effort. What do you say when someone accuses you of stealing something you were told to protect? Marla didn't look up when I stepped into her office. Sit, she said, already tapping her pen against the desk. I noticed the tablet first, propped up, camera light on, then the woman in the corner chair. This is Elaine, Marla said. Human resources. Elaine nodded once. She didn't smile. Is this about the rollout? I asked. It's about company property, Marla said. Answer the questions directly. Elaine glanced at the tablet. This meeting is being recorded. Recorded, I said. Why? Marla leaned back. Did you remove a company-issued laptop from the premises on Thursday evening? I took my work laptop home, I said. To finish the validation you asked for, so you admit you took it. Marla said. I took it to work. I said. You approved it. Elaine's fingers paused mid-note. Marla didn't. You removed company property without written authorization, Marla said. That is theft under policy. That's not theft, I said. That's my job. Marla's voice sharpened. Do not argue definitions with me. Then explain why you told me to do whatever I needed, I said. Explain why the systems went live clean. Because I stayed up all night. Elaine cleared her throat. Freya, please answer only what's asked. What's asked is wrong, I said. Marla stood. This isn't a discussion, so this is already decided, I said. Elaine finally looked at me. Her eyes were tired. We just need to complete the process. What process? I said. You didn't ask for my badge. You didn't ask for a handoff. You didn't ask for documentation. Marla pressed a button on her phone. Security, she said. We're ready. I felt something cold settle in my chest. You're doing this now. Marla met my eyes for the first time. I caught you red-handed. Elaine didn't correct her. She didn't pause the recording. She didn't ask another question. The door opened behind me, and the sound told me everything I needed to know. How fast can 6 years of loyalty disappear, Freya? Please stand, the guard said behind me. His voice was low, almost apologetic. I haven't been terminated, I said. You haven't given me paperwork. Marla didn't look up. That's been handled. Elaine slid a folder across the desk without meeting my eyes. Effective immediately, she said. Your access has been revoked. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Then again, then stopped. That was my badge, I said quietly. It just went dead. Marla picked up the laptop from the table and turned it toward me. The screen had already locked me out. Company property, she said. Hand it over. I need it for the transition, I said. There are systems only. There is no transition, she cut in. Security will escort you. The guard stepped closer. Please. I stood. My legs felt steadier than they should have. I reached for my bag, but Marla shook her head. Personal items only, she said. The laptop stays. As we walked out, my inbox refreshed one last time on my phone before cutting off completely. A message from Daniel flashed for half a second. Then it vanished. Freya, someone whispered from a nearby desk. I looked over. Priya from infrastructure had half risen from her chair, her hand still on her mouse. It's fine, I said, because that was what I'd always said when things broke. She sat back down without another word. The elevator ride was silent. The guard stared straight ahead. You don't have to do this like this. I said, I do. He replied, I'm sorry. In the lobby. Marla appeared again, holding a small evidence bag. Inside was my laptop charger. You forgot this, she said, sliding it into the guard's hands. Make sure it stays with the device. I stepped outside without turning back. My phone buzzed again, then showed a blank screen where my calendar used to be. 6 years of access vanished in under a minute. The doors closed behind me, and for the first time since I'd built the systems everyone depended on, I was on the outside looking in. What if the system they trusted had a rule they never bothered to understand? I set my bag down on the kitchen chair and opened my personal laptop. Not the company one. The one Marla hadn't thought about. My hands moved out of habit, not panic. The dashboard loaded slower than usual. That's odd, I said to no one. A red notification slid across the screen. Administrative access anomaly detected. I leaned closer. No, I whispered. You didn't. My phone buzzed. A text from Daniel came through before the company network cut him off completely. Freya. I can't log into staging. Did something change? I'm not in the system anymore. I typed back. What errors are you seeing? 3 dots appeared. then disappeared. Another alert surfaced on my screen. Failsafe protocol initializing. I felt the anger rise then, sharp and contained. Not loud, not wild, controlled. They never asked me about this part. The failsafe wasn't sabotage. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. I designed it after a breach scare 3 years earlier, back when the board wanted everything faster and cheaper. A last resort lock designed to trigger when a senior architect's credentials were revoked without a transition key. Unauthorized administrative removal. I'd argued for it in a meeting that Marla skipped. This could freeze the system, the finance director had said. Only if someone does something reckless, I replied at the time. My phone rang. Unknown number. Freya, a tight voice said when I answered. This is Kyle from Internal Tools. Are you making changes? I can't, I said. You locked me out. Silence. Then, our authentication layer is rejecting everything. I closed my eyes. Then the failsafe has engaged. What does that mean? He asked. It means the system thinks I've been compromised, I said evenly. And it's doing exactly what I told it to do. Another alert flashed. Core dependencies entering containment mode. I didn't touch the keyboard. I didn't have to. The system was already moving. Somewhere downtown, screens were starting to go dark, and the people who had thrown me out were finally about to learn what they had never asked me about. Can a company survive losing the person who built its foundation? My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Freya? Kyle said the moment I answered, breathless. Nothing's authenticating. Even service accounts are getting rejected. I know, I said. I'm watching it happen. That's not possible, he said. We reset the tokens. We restarted the nodes. You can't restart a lock, I said. You can only wait it out. Another call cut in before he could answer. I switched lines. This is finance, a woman said. Payments are queued but not clearing. Customers are calling. Pull the queue, I said. Don't force it. We can't access the console, she said. It's asking for a credential that doesn't exist. I closed my eyes. That credential was never meant to be used. It's a failsafe. A third call came through. Then a fourth. I stopped answering. On my screen, the dashboard filled with status changes I'd written years ago and never expected to see live. Authentication layer locked. Internal tooling restricted. Payment processing paused. The system wasn't crashing. It was containing itself. My phone buzzed with a text. Freya, Daniel wrote. The deployment just rolled back on its own. Marla is yelling. It says it's a security event. I typed slowly. It is? Another message followed almost immediately. They're saying it's an attack. It isn't, I replied. It's a response. The calls kept coming. Unknown numbers, internal extensions. People who had never spoken to me directly before. Can you reverse this? Someone finally asked in a voicemail. His voice shook. We have partners on hold. I set the phone face down. The failsafe was doing what it had been designed to do. Stop everything until accountability was restored. No exceptions. No shortcuts. No panic overrides. Downtown, teams were scrambling, running playbooks that assumed a threat from outside. They were looking for an enemy. They hadn't figured out yet that the system wasn't defending itself from a hacker. It was defending itself from them. What do executives fear more than a system failure? I want answers. The CEO said. Now. No one spoke at first. I wasn't in the room, but Kyle later told me he had never heard that tone before. Not in quarterly reviews. Not during layoffs. Not even during the last outage. Paul from IT broke the silence. The systems entered containment mode, he said. It wasn't external. It was triggered internally, by what the CEO asked. Paul swallowed. By the failsafe tied to senior architect credentials. Another pause. Which architect? The CEO said. Marla straightened in her chair. Freya Hale. The CEO's head snapped up. Freya Hale works here. She did, Marla said. Until Friday. The room shifted. Chairs creaked. Someone whispered. You fired her, the CEO said. When Friday morning, Marla replied. For removing company property without authorization. What property? The CEO asked. The company laptop, she said. She took it home. Paul stared at her. She had root-level design authority. Marla waved a hand. That's irrelevant. Policy is policy. Did you review this with legal? The CEO asked. No, Marla said. It was a clear violation. Did you notify me? He pressed. Marla hesitated. I didn't think it was necessary. Paul leaned forward. She designed the authentication layer, the payment pipeline, the internal tooling. The failsafe is key to her role. The CEO's voice dropped. You revoked her access without a transition. Marla's jaw tightened. She admitted to taking the laptop. She took it to work, Paul said. Everyone knows that. The CEO stood, so let me understand this. You removed the one person who could authorize a safe handoff during an active rollout, without review, without documentation, and without notifying executive leadership. Marla opened her mouth, then closed it. And now the system has locked itself because it thinks its architect has been compromised. The CEO continued, which, from its perspective, she has. Silence pressed down on the room. Get legal on the line, the CEO said. And suspend Marla Matthews effective immediately. Marla's chair scraped back. You can't, I can, he said, and I just did. Across the city, my phone vibrated once. A single message came through from an unfamiliar number. This is the office of the chief executive. We need to speak with you today. What do you say when the people who humiliated you suddenly need you? The first message came through an hour after the CEO suspended Marla. It wasn't a call. It wasn't an apology. It was an email marked urgent, sent from an address I didn't recognize. Freya Hale. It began. I am David Kessler, outside counsel for the company. We request a conversation today regarding an operational matter. I read it once, then again. I closed the laptop and made tea. My phone rang a few minutes later, same number as before. I let it ring until it stopped. When I finally replied, it was by email. I'm available tomorrow morning. Please outline the agenda. The response came fast. Too fast. We'd like to discuss restoring access and resolving the containment event, I typed back. Access was revoked by your client. The system responded accordingly. There was a pause this time. 10 minutes passed. Then another message arrived. We are prepared to move quickly. I smiled without humor. Speed had never been my problem. Being ignored had. The call was scheduled for the next morning. On the line were David, someone from internal legal named Rebecca, and a man who introduced himself as interim operations lead. Freya, David said, measured and careful. We appreciate you taking the time. I'm listening, I said. There's a desire to de-escalate, Rebecca added. The company recognizes mistakes were made. Mistakes require correction, I said, not urgency. Silence stretched. No one rushed to fill it. I could hear someone breathing on the other end. We need your cooperation, the operations lead said, finally. You need stability, I replied. Those aren't the same thing, David cleared his throat. What would you need to re-engage? I didn't say I would, I said. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll review whatever you send. I continued. In writing, through counsel. I won't be rushed, and I won't be cornered. We understand, David said quietly. When the call ended, my hands were steady. The anger that had carried me through the last 2 days had settled into something sharper and more controlled. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to prove anything. For the first time since Friday, they were waiting on me. Can a company recover from proving it doesn't protect its own people? The update didn't come from legal. It came from Kyle. They pulled Marla's access, he said over the phone. Security walked her out this morning. For suspension, I asked. No, he said, termination. I let that settle before responding. What reason did they give? Violation of escalation protocol, he said. Abuse of authority. Failure to notify executive leadership. I closed my eyes. That didn't take long. It's not just her, Kyle continued. They brought in an outside audit firm. Full review, access controls, termination procedures, system governance, everything. Clients know I asked. They know something's wrong, he said. 2 paused renewals already. 1 asked for written assurances about data integrity. I pictured the conference rooms I used to sit in. The same polished language being used now to explain away a decision that never should have been made. Later that afternoon, David from legal called again. His voice sounded different this time, less careful, more tired. The board has authorized a full internal investigation, he said. They're taking this seriously. They should, I replied. There will be findings, he continued. And consequences. I'm not asking for a report, I said. I'm asking for distance. He hesitated. Distance I won't be returning, I said. And I won't be rushed into fixing what I didn't break. Another pause. Then, understood. By the end of the week, industry chatter started to shift. Not headlines, just quiet mentions. A missed deadline here, a delayed deployment there, recruiters asking careful questions, clients watching more closely than before. Daniel texted me late Friday night. "They're calling it a culture failure now," he wrote, "not a technical one." I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Those are harder to patch. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. The company was still standing, but something fundamental had cracked. And everyone inside knew it. Authority had been misused. Trust had been broken. And no system, no matter how well built, could hide that forever. I set my phone down and turned off the light, knowing the fallout was no longer in my hands. What does justice look like when no one is cheering? The confirmation came in a short call from David, his voice steady but stripped of ceremony. "The board has concluded its review," he said. "Marla Matthews' termination stands. The audit findings will be filed. Access governance has been restructured. The containment will be lifted once new controls are in place." "And me," I said. There was a pause. "You won't be asked to return." "I wasn't waiting for the invitation," I replied. "We understand," he said. "There will be a written acknowledgement of your role in stabilizing the situation." "I don't need acknowledgement," I said. "I need distance." After the call, Kyle texted once more. "They're quieter now," he wrote. "People think before they escalate, before they threaten." "That's good," I typed back. It means something changed. I didn't step back into the building. I didn't sit across from executives offering softened words. The company kept operating, slower and more cautious. Missing a few deadlines it once took for granted. People stayed, some left. The name remained, but the certainty didn't. A week later, Priya called. They asked who should lead the handoff. She said, "Not me." I said, "You already know how the system thinks." She laughed softly. "I learned from you. That was the point," I said. When I shut my laptop that evening, it was quiet in a way that felt earned. Not relief, not victory. Peace without permission. I didn't lose anything that mattered. I kept my name. I kept my work. I kept my dignity. The company lost its shortcuts and learned to count the cost of its decisions. Life lesson, power tests character in moments of pressure. When authority forgets the people who build its foundations, consequences arrive without malice and without mercy. Accountability does not need anger to be effective. It only needs truth and time. They didn't lose their systems because I was angry. They lost them because they forgot who built them. The moment the chief executive officer said his son's name, everything I had built over 13 years stopped feeling real. I was already seated when the meeting began. My notebook open, pen ready out of habit more than need. This was supposed to be procedural, a final transition discussion, a formality before retirement. 3 days earlier, he had stood in his office, hands folded behind his back, and said, "Hannah, no one deserves this role more than you. You carried this company when it could barely stand." I believed him because I had lived that truth. He didn't ease into the announcement. He didn't look at me first. He cleared his throat and said, calmly, "Before I step down, I want everyone to know that my son will be taking over the role. It's already done." Someone inhaled sharply across the table. I didn't. My body stayed still, but something inside me went quiet, like a system shutting itself down to prevent further damage. I heard my own voice, faint but steady. "You said I would be leading the transition." He nodded once. "And you still will. Just not in the way we discussed." That was when his son spoke for the first time, smiling as if we were being introduced at a conference. "I'm really looking forward to working closely with you, Hannah. My father's told me so much about your contributions. Contributions, not leadership, not ownership." I managed a polite response. Years of boardrooms had trained me well. "Of course," I said. "I care deeply about the company." The chief executive officer finally looked at me then. His eyes didn't hold confidence. They held relief, as if a difficult task had been completed. The meeting moved on without me. Timelines, titles, announcements. I wrote nothing. I couldn't have written if I tried. My name is Hannah Whitmore. I am the person who designed the system that turned a struggling operation into a $1.5 billion company. I had stayed late when everyone else went home. I had fixed failures before they reached the public. I had believed in a promise made behind a closed door. When the meeting ended, his son extended his hand again. "We'll talk soon," he said. I nodded. My fingers were cold. This story is a fictional work created by the writing team at Revenge AITA. While inspired by real corporate dynamics and emotional truths, many people recognize all characters, companies, and events are products of creative storytelling. The purpose of this story is not to accuse or represent any real individual, but to explore themes of trust, power, and quiet resilience through narrative. I walked out of that room knowing something fundamental had changed, not in the company, in me. When I first met Richard Hale, the company was barely breathing. He stood across from me in a cramped conference room, sleeves rolled up, voice steady but tired. "I can sell the vision," he said, "but I need someone who can make it real." I told him the truth. I don't build demos. I build systems that survive pressure. He smiled at that. "That's exactly why I called you. From the beginning, we understood our roles without ever naming them." He was the one on stages, in interviews, shaking hands with investors. I was the one in the background, turning ideas into architecture, fixing what broke at 2 a.m, making sure promises didn't collapse under scrutiny. One night, years later, after a brutal rollout that nearly failed, he came into the engineering room with 2 cups of coffee and handed me one. "You know," he said, lowering his voice, "when I step away, this place should be yours." I looked up from my screen. "That's not something you say lightly." "I'm not," he replied. "You've built this company with me. People just don't see it." That wasn't the only time. Before major funding rounds, after tense board meetings, he would repeat it in different ways. "You're the continuity. You're the one who knows where the bodies are buried. No one else could take this over cleanly." When the company crossed a valuation of $1.5 billion, he called me into his office again. He didn't celebrate. He didn't smile. He said, "I want my exit to be simple. No chaos, no fighting. You lead, I leave knowing it's safe." I trusted him because his words matched his actions for over a decade. He defended my decisions. He backed my technical calls when they were unpopular. He never once suggested blood mattered more than competence. So when he announced his retirement timeline, I prepared like someone stepping into a responsibility, not chasing a title. I organized documentation, I trained teams. I made sure nothing depended solely on me anymore. I believed we were finishing something together. I did not know he was preparing to end it alone. He arrived the following Monday, not announced, just present. Richard stood and gestured toward him. "Everyone, this is Evan." Evan smiled easily. "I've heard a lot about you all," he said, voice smooth, practiced. "I'm excited to bring some fresh momentum into the organization." Momentum. The word landed lightly, like it didn't need to carry weight. He took the seat at the head of the table without hesitation. No laptop, no notes. Just confidence, fully formed. "I want us moving faster," he continued. "Cleaner communication, sharper execution." One of the board members leaned forward. "That's exactly what we need right now." I waited for the question that never came. The one about architecture, about dependencies, about why certain systems couldn't be rushed without consequences. Instead, Evan turned to me. "You've been here a long time, Hannah. I'm looking forward to learning from you." Learning was a generous word. He didn't ask what I had built. He didn't ask how it worked. He didn't ask what would break first if someone pushed too hard. Another board member nodded approvingly. "He's got presence," she said. "Clients will love him." Evan smiled again. "Technology is about storytelling," he said. "If people believe in the vision, the details will follow." I felt something tighten in my chest. I spoke carefully. "The details don't follow," I said. "They lead?" The room went quiet for half a second. Richard cleared his throat. "Hannah's always been very precise," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Evan brings a broader perspective." Broader, that was the word they chose. Evan leaned back, folding his hands. "I respect the foundation you've built," he said. "My job is to evolve it." I nodded once. "Evolution requires understanding." He held my gaze, still smiling. "That's what teams are for." The meeting moved on. Decisions were made without data. Timelines were shortened without discussion. Each approval came faster than the last. When it ended, Evan stood first. "Great energy," he said. "This is going to be a strong transition." I stayed seated for a moment after everyone left. The room felt different now, not because Evan was there, because the system no longer belonged to the person who understood it. Evan started calling them optimizations. They're minor, he said in a stand-up meeting, tapping the table once for emphasis. We don't need to slow ourselves down with legacy habits. Which habits? I asked, keeping my voice even. He glanced at a screen someone else had pulled up. Extended testing, redundant documentation. We can streamline. Mara, one of the senior engineers, spoke before I could. Those steps aren't redundant. They catch edge failures. Evan smiled at her, the kind of smile meant to soften disagreement. We'll monitor closely. After the meeting, he stopped by my desk. I want to move fast, he said. Can you help me identify areas we can clean up? Cleaning up requires context, I said. What's the deadline soon? He replied. The board wants to see momentum. Soon was not a number. Soon was a risk. By the end of the week, test cycles were shortened. Change logs were thinner. A documentation update I had written months earlier resurfaced in a new format with a different title and a different author listed at the top. I forwarded the file to Evan. This is the same framework. He didn't deny it. We adjusted the language, he said. It reads better for non-technical audiences. It reads like it was written by someone else. I said. That's how collaboration works, he replied, already turning away. At the next review, Richard praised the progress. I like the efficiency, he said. Feels lighter? I said nothing. Later that night, Evan messaged me. I need approval to bypass the second validation layer on the next release. It exists for a reason, I wrote back. So does speed, he replied. I stared at the message longer than necessary. I could have pushed back publicly. I could have escalated. Instead, I documented everything quietly and approved nothing verbally. Silence is not agreement. It is a decision to watch. Over the next few days, my name appeared less often. The system ran, but it felt thinner, like something had been hollowed out without anyone noticing. Evan kept smiling, the board kept applauding, and I kept my records precise, my responses brief, my distance measured. Some changes do not announce themselves as dangerous. They ask permission by pretending to be small. I found out through an email I was not copied on. Mara forwarded it to me with no comment. The subject line read, Investor Update Platform Optimization Progress. I opened the attachment. Evan's name was at the top. I read the first paragraph and felt my jaw tighten. The optimization described was the query restructuring I had finished 3 nights earlier. The performance gain figures matched my internal tests exactly. The wording was new, polished, confident. The substance was not. I walked straight into Evan's office and placed the printout on his desk. This is my work. He didn't look surprised. It's the team's work, he said calmly. You sent it under your name. I sent it as the CTO, he replied. That's how reporting works now. Reporting doesn't erase authorship. He leaned back. Hannah, you're being too close to this. Investors don't care who wrote which line. They care that it works. Then why remove my name at all? He smiled thinly. Because clarity matters, one voice. At the next board check-in, the shift became visible. A question came up about system resilience. Normally, all eyes turned to me. This time, they turned to Evan. He answered smoothly. We're simplifying legacy complexity. No one asked me to clarify. Richard nodded. Good. That's the direction we need. After the meeting, one of the board members approached me near the door. You've been such a solid support through all of this, she said warmly. It must be nice to finally have some breathing room. Support. The word landed heavier than any insult. Later that evening, Evan sent another message. Next update goes out tomorrow. Same structure, same content. I replied. He did not respond. The system kept running. Dashboards stayed green. Clients noticed nothing. On the surface, everything worked. But something fundamental had shifted. Credit had begun moving faster than code, and with it, authority. I wasn't being removed loudly. I was being rewritten quietly. That was when my resolve stopped wavering. Not to argue, not to protest, to prepare. The alert came just after dawn. Mara's voice was tight on the call. We're seeing cascading timeouts across 3 regions. Clients are already reporting delays. I was at my desk within minutes. Logs streamed past. Familiar patterns breaking in unfamiliar ways. I traced the failure path and stopped cold. A validation layer had been bypassed. The authorization token was accepted where it never should have been. I opened the change history. The approval timestamp was clear. Evan's name sat beside it. I walked into the emergency meeting with my laptop already open. Evan was standing at the screen, speaking fast. "This is exactly what happens when legacy systems can't keep up," he said. "We inherited fragility. That's not accurate," I said. And the room stilled. I turned my screen toward the table. The breach came from a shortcut added in the last release. It opened a path that never existed before. Evan didn't look at the data. "Logs don't tell the whole story," he said. The foundation was outdated. Richard shifted in his chair. "Can we focus on containment?" he said, not meeting my eyes. "I can fix this." I said, "I need to roll back the change and restore the validation layer." A board member spoke up. "We can't afford public disagreement right now." Evan nodded. "Exactly. We need unity. Unity doesn't change facts," I said. Another board member leaned forward. "Hannah, tensions are high. For the sake of stability, we think it's best if you take a temporary step back." "Step back from what?" I asked. "From day-to-day decisions," Richard said quietly. "Just until things settle." Settle meant silence. Settle meant distance. I closed my laptop. "You're choosing the story over the system." No one answered. As I stood to leave, Evan exhaled, relieved. "We'll take it from here." I nodded once, not in agreement, in acknowledgement. They had found the failure they needed, and they had chosen who to place it on. No one escorted me out. No security badge was taken. They didn't think I was a threat. That afternoon, I received a short message from legal. "We'll formalize the temporary leave paperwork by end of day." Temporary. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the repository I had maintained since the company's first year. The frameworks were there, the licensing headers, the clauses everyone had skimmed when things were calm. Mara stopped by my desk, eyes cautious. "Are you really stepping away?" "I'm stepping aside," I said. "There's a difference." She hesitated. "They're saying you abandoned the release." "I documented every risk," I replied. "They approved every shortcut." She nodded slowly. "I know." Later, Richard called me into his office. His voice was tired, careful. "This doesn't have to be permanent. It already is," I said. He sighed. "Evan is under pressure. So was I." I said, "For 13 years." He didn't argue. "We'll need access to the core modules while you're out." "You have access," I said. "You always did." "Usage rights haven't changed." He looked up. "And the licensing extensions, they're tied to my role," I said evenly. "Architect approval is required for expansion. That's a formality. It's a condition," I replied. He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "You're not sabotaging us. I'm not touching anything," I said. "I'm leaving it exactly as it is." That night, I backed up my work, every framework, every log, every decision trail, not to hide it, to preserve it. When I shut down my terminal, the system kept running. Dashboards stayed green, alerts stayed quiet. Barely. The next morning, Evan sent a message. "We're seeing performance drag on the West cluster." I didn't respond. Another message followed. "Do you remember the dependency map for the authorization service?" I closed my laptop. I didn't take the company by force. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break a single rule. I simply walked away with the one thing no title could replace: understanding. Starting over did not feel like failure. It felt quiet. I rented a small workspace in San Jose and set up one desk, one server, and a whiteboard. No branding, no announcements, just work. Mara was the first to reach out. Her message was brief. "Are you building again?" "Yes." I wrote back. 2 days later, she sat across from me, hands wrapped around a paper cup. "I'm not asking for a title," she said. "I just want to build something that doesn't lie." "You won't get speed," I told her. "You'll get stability." She smiled. "That's all I want." Then Jonah called. He had led infrastructure for 3 years before Evan arrived. "They keep asking me to approve changes I don't understand anymore," he said. I thought I was losing my edge. "You're not," I said. "You're just not being listened to." He joined the next week. Our first client came through a quiet introduction, a mid-sized logistics firm that had once been courted aggressively by my old company. Their chief technology officer spoke plainly. "We don't need vision," she said. "We need something that holds." I showed her the architecture. No slides. Just logs and test results. How long until launch? She asked. Longer than you want, I said. Shorter than rebuilding after a failure. She nodded once. We can wait. We worked methodically. Every dependency documented. Every change reviewed. No shortcuts disguised as innovation. The system took shape slowly, but when it ran clean. One evening, as we reviewed the final deployment checklist, Jonah leaned back and said, "It's strange. I thought leaving would feel heavy." "It doesn't," Mara said quietly. I understood what she meant. The weight I had carried for years was gone, not because the work was easier, because it was honest again. When the system went live, nothing dramatic happened. No alerts, no late-night calls, just steady output. Some things work better once you stop forcing them to stay. The call came on a Thursday morning, just as I was reviewing logs with Mara. My phone buzzed once, then again. The name on the screen made her look up before I said anything. "Richard," I said quietly. I stepped into the hallway and answered. His voice sounded older than it had a month earlier. "Hannah, I'm in San Jose. I need to see you." I didn't respond right away. "They've had 3 major failures in 10 days, he continued. "Clients are freezing renewals. The board is panicking." I kept my voice steady. "What do you want from me?" "I want you back," he said. I should never have let this happen. We met that afternoon. He didn't bring anyone with him. No lawyers, no board members. Just a man who had run out of places to hide. "I'll give you everything," he said once we sat down. "Your title? Equity. Full control over engineering. Whatever you want." I wanted trust, I said. When it mattered. He swallowed. "Evan is overwhelmed. You put him there," I replied. Richard leaned forward. "The company won't survive without you." "That's not true," I said calmly. "It will survive, just not as it was." Silence settled between us. "You built something extraordinary," he said. "You owe it to the work." I honored the work, I said. "You chose to replace it." His shoulders sagged. "If I could undo it, you can't," I said gently. "And neither can I." He looked around the room, at the diagrams on the board, at the people working quietly beyond the glass. "You've already moved on." "Yes," I said. "And so should you." When he stood to leave, he hesitated. "I'm sorry I didn't protect you." "I know," I said. He nodded once and walked out. I returned to my desk and opened the dashboard. Everything was green. Some calls arrive after the decision has already been made. The board's decision arrived in writing, not in a meeting. Richard forwarded it to me without a message. The document was precise, clinical. An internal audit had concluded that multiple production changes violated established technical controls. Accountability was assigned. Evan was removed from all technical leadership roles, effective immediately, with restrictions that barred him from overseeing system architecture within the company again. No announcement followed, no apology tour, just removal. 2 weeks later, legal reached out. Their tone was different now, careful. "We need to discuss continued platform access," the attorney said over the call. "Certain components are tied to your original framework." "They always were," I replied. "We'd like to negotiate a licensing agreement." "Send the terms," I said. They did. Usage fees, compliance requirements, independent audits. The company would continue operating, but not on borrowed authority, on paper, on record. Mara read the message over my shoulder. So they finally understood. They understood the cost, I said. Our work continued, quietly. Clients came through referrals, not headlines. One afternoon, Jonah leaned back from his screen and said, "They asked if we wanted to expand faster, and I said, I told them we'd rather expand right." He smiled when I nodded. Months later, Richard sent one last message. The company stabilized. He wrote, "Different shape, smaller, but intact." I didn't respond. That evening, I walked through the office after everyone had left. Systems running clean, logs orderly. No alerts waiting to ambush the night. This was what survived. Not titles, not promises, not names printed at the top of reports. Understanding survived. Discipline survived. Work that could stand on its own without someone defending it. I shut down my monitor and gathered my bag. Justice did not arrive loudly. It did not demand attention or gratitude. It simply worked.